It's mission time as John tries to discover why Riva is so interested in Regimen technologies. Lauren decides that Dr. M's research has gone far enough, and the inner circle decides it's go big or go home as they orchestrate the largest mutant outbreak ever. Or breakout, really, as it is. It's the fall finale of The Gifted, Season 2, Episode 9, Game Changer. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of The Gifted. So yes, as usual, lots of spoilers ahead. Alright, so we are here with the fall finale episode, our mid-season break. And, you know, if you're going to take a break, you might as well end big. And I think they did that appropriately with this episode. The tagline for The Gifted this season is Rise of the Mutant Age. And we can really see where by the end of this week's episode, we have really sort of hit that. It is definitely a big shift. And we're going to be dealing with actually a lot of big shifts kind of throughout this episode. So yeah, lots of action, lots of development. Good episode all around. So let's start things off with Rebecca. That's how the episode starts out. And she's not in it for too long, so we might as well take a moment and dwell with her. And I have to say, I do appreciate our little flashback to the year ago in Virginia when Rebecca left her family. There's an old Twilight Zone episode called It's a Good Life, which basically deals with a kid who has godlike powers, and the entire town that he lives in kind of lives in constant fear of him, always trying to make him happy for fear of being shuffled off to the cornfield from which no one returns. He can also just totally warp reality around. So it's a very scary episode, one of Twilight Zone's best. And this opening really reminded me entirely of that. The parents sitting down, they're making pancakes for Rebecca. They've got that big fake smile plastered on their face like, hey sweetheart, don't worry, everything's great. It's all good. Please don't kill us. It was sort of a perfect setup and really showing how Rebecca is this carefree but still really kind of psychotic character. I mean, look, the whole free use of powers and turning her pancakes inside out to discover their blueberry it's you know, it's one thing to just be so open with that, but we're talking about, you know, that she's going to have to change schools. She thinks she got kicked out again. They're concerned that they almost killed her parents. We can really see where this is a family at the end. So the arrival of Sentinel Services and sort of picking up Rebecca really makes sense. And one interesting thing about that scene, however, is, from my understanding, she killed her parents. And we don't see this. I mean, the collar gets put on, which should have cut her abilities, her powers. And yet we were told that she killed her parents. And I think even in a discussion with Andy, she kind of talks about the fact that her parents are dead, that her mom's dead, and so on. So I was kind of wondering if we were going to get a shot of her bursting through before the collar went on, or maybe overriding the collar and then getting knocked out by Sentinel after she took care of her parents or something like that. So, I mean, just kind of an interesting point right there. We were told one story, we have another. Is there more that we don't know, or was there someone intentionally lying? Did they convince Rebecca that she killed her parents as a way to maybe protect them so she wouldn't go after them? Just sort of a thought. However, again, psychotic kid, definitely with the post-massacre of our 37 Creed financial individuals, all that earns her, instead of being put inside of a mental facility, is the 12-sided die of torture. Which I thought was rather interesting. The idea, as Sage put it, that she has to be in constant motion and in the dark so she can't get a fix on anything to invert it. Thought was kind of a cool idea. I mean, dark, twisted, yeah, for sure. But still, there's a thought behind it. There's a meaning behind it. Riva, though, not very compassionate. I mean, when Sage brings up that Rebecca isn't dealing with it too well, she hasn't stopped screaming, and Riva's just like, "What? Let her scream. What do I care?" Again, inner circle, darker mutants. I'm not talking about everything they decide to do as evil. There is some definitely flexibility in that interpretation. But cold, definitely cold. And Andy not dealing well with that. And I have to say, I liked a lot of Andy's motion through this episode. The fact that he is so concerned about Rebecca. Yes, they were connected. They were, they had a moment together. Completely understandable. What I found really interesting is actually his comments to Riva when he's saying, I mean, a very insightful idea when he's like, look, she was taken from her parents. She was drugged and locked in a hospital. This was her first mission. What did you expect? That's a very poignant observation on Andy's part because, yes, we do have a kid that's kind of psychotic, definitely freshly outside of a mental institution. And as Lorna spoke with Andy about it later, if you don't go into one of those things broken, you certainly come out broken. And I think Lorna tried to kind of maybe give Riva a little bit of a warning. But she was pushed into this. So I understand Andy's reaction, and it's very insightful. It's just missing the key ingredient, and that is Rebecca was messed up beforehand. And when Riva sort of pushes Andy as talks about this mission, this is something we have to do, and this is to get our mutant home world, or homeland all set up and together. Very effective. I mean, Riva's a good talker in that sense. But I loved how she left it with, I know you're going to make the right choice. And the next thing we see is Andy packing his bags and getting ready to get out of there. And I loved that. I loved his insight of just like, there's something wrong with this place. It's time to go. Which leads to a very evolutionary point for Andy. And that's why it's our Scene of the Week for this week. And maybe it's a couple of scenes sort of put together, a sequence. But that whole breakout. Because I think this is a giant paradigm shift for Andy. I think this is where Andy really loses his innocence. And I know he's gone over to the inner circle and they did the breakout mission and he fought his sister and done all of that. And those were all steps. But I think this was the big one because so much happened and so much he had to react to. It was such a huge shift. I mean, decides to leave, makes a big choice. This is not the place to be. We gotta go. Goes to rescue Rebecca, which again, awesome, sweet, emotionally understanding. And she's excited to see him, and again, we've got that sort of young love, infatuation, heroic moment right there. But the minute they step on the elevator and Rebecca is like, no, let's not get out of here, let's go up to the penthouse, I want to go meet up with Riva and everyone else. We have to take care of them or we'll never be free. Just not even interested. Focus purely on revenge, purely on killing. And that's where Andy is starting with the whole, like, what? No, we should go. What are you doing? His vision of where things are supposed to go is being totally shattered. And Rebecca steps out and goes to completely invert everybody, the Frost sisters and Riva, all at once and take care of them. It forces Andy to act. And while Riva afterwards talks about that he had chose who he loved, I'm not sure if it's entirely choosing necessarily Riva and the Frost sisters, but more choosing against Rebecca's intent, what she wants to do, the whole murder, killing thing. Regardless, his first kill, really. Killing the girl that he's infatuated with, you could even say is in love with, taking her out so she can't do anything worse. And yes, the death is accidental, and certainly surprising. I didn't think Rebecca was going to be taken out this quick. But this whole bit leading up to that first kill, the shattering of his viewpoint, his heroic idea, his innocence, to me, again, they're lost. This is that paradigm shift. This is where Andy becomes an adult, becomes someone else, has to shift things over. And very appropriate that Lorna is able to, again, redirect that anger over towards Regimen Technologies to take care of the big mission. Yes, I understand you're angry. Use that anger. Focus it towards the people that caused Rebecca to be like this. Obviously, sort of blowing past the fact that Rebecca was damaged long before. That's why she was in the hospital. But, like I said, it's a big moment for Andy, a big shift for him. Now, someone else sort of losing it in this episode would be John, our Thunderbird, who is a little obsessively focused with taking out the inner circle this episode. His reaction to the loss of the Mutant Underground, or the influence of the Mutant Underground, and the big movements of the inner circle, the whole uprising with the purifiers coming out, he is all taking that on as sort of his personal responsibility. And I think this is really the reaction off of all of that. And in some ways, I think his purposes are noble. I mean, as he was telling Marcos in kind of that first scene, that the humans are fighting back. The human allies aren't with the mutants, and the mutants are fearing that there's no choice here other than war. So if you can't bring the people together, then that fracture is only going to get bigger. The divide's only going to be more, and therefore, what is the Mutant Underground able to do? So I can understand John's sort of point of view is they have to counter the inner circle. They have to fight back. They have to kind of stop this direction immediately, or it's going to be very difficult for the Underground to recover, for the idea of some sort of peace between mutants and humans to exist. So I understand the sort of motivation that's going on with John in this episode. However, he does totally take it way too far. And the sort of split, the schism that sort of developed between him and Blank, I think, sort of comes to the fore really in this episode because of that obsession. Because he is so focused on taking out the inner circle that he does sort of lose sight on what it is that they're fighting for. And I like that sort of argument that not only Clarice brings up with John, but Marcos does also kind of at the very end. Is you have to remember we're fighting for the people close to us. And we can't sacrifice them in order to get this larger goal, because otherwise you've already lost. So all of those little discussions and kind of back and forth, I thought was really well developed kind of in this episode. My favorite bit by far, I have to say, is the sort of kidnapping. I mean, the whole thing bringing up the fact of, like, you're going to kidnap this guy, this poor little systems engineer? It's already sort of a great setup, but when you have Marcos sitting there in the car, changing the radio stations, then getting the call of like, we gotta go, we gotta get ready, open up the trunk. Is that gunfire? It opens the trunk and Blink just sets a portal there and drops the poor guy into the trunk. I mean, that was great. Even the guy's looking up, it's like, don't look at me, I'm as clueless about this as you are. Slam. I mean, the whole system. I thought that was a great scene. It was a nice little kind of comic moment, but also very serious about how far John is willing to push things and the danger he's willing to put the people around him in order to get his answers. And that sort of is just pretty much what the rest of that whole sequence was all about. Which is kind of perfect then. That just as the guy discovers, hey, I've discovered what's going on. You know, what I think it could be is blam, blam, blam. And killed right before they're able to take things out. That's sort of how the luck for the Mutant Underground works out. John's already at this point pushed Clarice away, and just as he's about to finally get the information he wants to, he's waited too long. He's pushed too hard, and that has allowed Fade to come in and sort of take him out. And it was interesting the fact that they weren't interested in taking out Fade, that even when the Purifier showed up at the end, that both of them, both Marcos and John, were trying to save Fade and keep him from getting killed by the purifiers. Obviously they want some answers, and that's probably a good reason to keep him alive, but I also think it's still one of those, like, you're still a mutant, you're still one of us, you still used to be one of us at least. We can't let you fall into these hands. So, again, a good sequence really showing how John sort of cascaded out. His whole obsession has had the effect of pushing away the people around him and ultimately gets him caught. Though he does have a nice heroic kind of moment there at the end. That end, of course, coming at the hands of Jace, who has really stepped into his purifier role. I know, I keep hoping that he kind of shifts away and sees the purifiers for the dark bastards that they are. He's not at that step yet. I guess he's got to go down a further darker road. Definitely has become the big speaker for the purifier meetings there. Everybody loves Jace now. And he's taken that position control again. He's basically taken his Sentinel Services position and now taken that over inside of the purifiers, starting up the Citizens Militia to go after the mutants. I did find it interesting how in the interview he's talking about, no, we're not anti-mutant. If any mutant wants to be on the path of righteousness and join us, we're patriots. They use the word patriot. It always seems to signify some sort of racist background, or I don't know. When that term is used often these days, the connotation behind it isn't as positive as I think that it should be. Or it's used by people that are kind of hiding behind that term, I think, more than likely. But we're patriots. If any mutant wants to go and do the big fight, they're welcome to join us. I really don't think so. I mean, I think maybe Jace thinks so. One, I agree with the Frost reaction, is that's really falling, stepping downwards, going downwards, falling upwards, whatever it is. It's definitely a bad move for any mutant in that sense. And yeah, okay, the whole killing Jace, she was saving the sisters. Didn't have time for that. But, just think that it's, again, I think Jace has that idea that he is fighting for righteousness and doesn't realize completely or accept, maybe willingly ignoring the fact that no other purifier is going to allow a mutant inside of their group, whether they're fighting for them or not. Hate runs a little bit too deep. But does, of course, recognize once the search barometers go out there, recognizes the clinic that they had already raided, which is how they're able to show up and eventually sort of take out John. So an interesting little shot there at the end where John is not quite as invulnerable as he thinks that he is. And that last shot of Jace sort of just, I got you. Which is sort of comical because Jace isn't Sentinel Services anymore. Gotcha. For what? Something tells me the police are not really going to be involved in the next scene between those two. And as for Lauren's assault on Dr. M's research, I don't know, it was all pretty straightforward there. I think that it was nicely done. I appreciate that Reed volunteers very quickly that even though this research could save his life, that he sees what Lauren is going after, the threat to all of mutants, and that this has to stop. There is kind of an interesting little switch that happens a few times in the episode between Caitlin and Reed. Initially, Reed's like, we got to do this, and Caitlin's like, but you're going to die. And like the next scene, it's like Reed going, I don't know if we should do this. Maybe this is too dangerous. And Caitlin's like, no, it's the right thing to do. We need to save the other people. So they kind of do a little back and forth between their viewpoints, which, I don't know. I guess everybody sort of changes their minds and you need your partner to help reinforce you. But it was a little distracting in some sense of like, you need to have consistent character viewpoints. Otherwise it sort of feels like they're just sort of filling in lines that they want to say and they're just sort of trading back and forth who says that in order for people to have a dynamic interaction. But again, small thing. Overall, I love the fact that they were immediately together. They immediately understood what needed to happen. And this, you know, they had to stop Dr. M Sorry, it just makes me laugh. Madeline's plan to create a cure to stop the X gene. The one interesting thing that I see, and it wasn't, I mean, in some ways it was kind of satisfying, but it was also kind of, I don't know, cheap, is in that final scene in the lab, in the cold room, where they get caught and Madeline comes in, and she sort of at that point drops any pretext of being, you know, mutants are okay, really follows into her brother's, the Purifiers, viewpoint, as that there is a scourge on it, and what is the whole thing is, you know, Lauren should never have been born, and Noah is a curse to her family, and I'm fighting for the human species. I mean, all of that. It's just, it's easy to go in that direction, to instantly make her a bad person. That yes, all of this has just been pretext, and she's really fueled by hate, just like her brother, just like the Purifiers are. And there was a certain satisfaction with that, I admit. On the other hand, I'm not sure if, I think it might have been more interesting if she really tried to grasp to her own viewpoint, that she just had a deluded idea of stopping the X gene in order to help mutants. That yes, mutants with powers are one thing, but there's so many people that are cursed, like Noah, with powers that they can't control. You know, it just would have been kind of more of an interesting thing if she had tried to sit onto her ideals and the beliefs that she purported out there, that she was just sort of mixed out. By making her just a villain, that her whole portion has been to stop mutants because, again, scourge on the planet, trying to save humanity. It's a little cheap. Again, it's satisfying, like, haha, I knew that you were actually evil, but I just think it would have been more of an interesting character point to show the dynamics if she was just misguided, that wasn't anti-mutant, but just believed in the dangers that mutant powers existed, and this could be used for a good. Because of course when she goes the evil way, then her mutant lab assistant is going to catch on, which happens when you say Noah was a curse to his family. Which gave a very satisfying sequence of Noah pulling out that that pin there and releasing his harmonic powers to destroy the lab and everything else. We don't end up seeing what happens. Does he survive? Does the doctor survive? It's a fall finale, so of course we're going to have a certain cliffhangers. But I did like that whole movement. So the Struckers are out. They're free. They've got a couple of vials to try and hold over on Reed's condition, though. She also did mention one other thing that I thought was interesting about how his cells, you know, emit a protein that have a power and energy release, and that the serum that they give them is suppressing the reaction of that protein. What seemed to imply is that when the serum runs out, that all of the energy that's been stored in Reed's body is suddenly going to be released, and that could cause him to explode or something like that. Massive energy release, and that could kill him. Interesting direction. I'm not sure if I read that right. Were they talking about what his powers normally does, or is this going to be the consequence? So does this make Reed a ticking time bomb at this point? Interesting. All right, just a couple of small things. One, we had some great X-Men references, or lines referring to the X-Men in this episode. One where Clarice was reacting to being told of what John's plan is about kidnapping a poor systems engineer. Hey, we're really living the dream of the X-Men now. Yeah, that's kind of appropriately said. And then Marcos's line to John after that, when John's talking about, this is what we gotta do, we gotta push, and Marcos is like, man, if you bring up the X-Men right now, I'm gonna seriously punch you in the face. I thought it was just hilarious. Really, again, Mutant Underground is there to carry on the X-Men's dream, but right now, maybe bringing up the X-Men's name isn't really what people want to hear. Oh, and I don't want to forget, I did ask you guys about the school in the Alps, and if that reminded you guys of anything. Definitely had some great feedback from the comments section. There was the Frost School, which kind of makes sense that that might sort of imply about. But yes, I do believe that was in Genosha, which is the mutant homeland. So we are in a way sort of moving towards that. But Rob over there at Smirking Gun Reviews did bring up that Monet St. Croix studied in a school in the Alps, one of the mutant characters. So there has been a Swiss Alps school that has been mentioned, but I don't know if it is specifically mutant training from the comics. So anyway, really appreciate you guys throwing out that insight and giving me your extra ears and minds on that question. Oh, and I don't want to wrap things up without going into Regimen Technologies and their control of the mutant suppression collars and the whole fact that the Inner Circle is going to take that out. It was a beautiful last sequence. I don't think it was as impactful in a way. I don't think it was personal as the one with Andy against Rebecca, which is why that's our scene of the week and not this final breakout one. But this was sort of a perfect way, and again, a great way to leave us for a cliffhanger. Going in, taking out the systems, and freeing all of the mutants in the entire country that are wearing those suppression collars, and now letting them free to escape, strike out. Of course, most of them are all in prison. Which, okay, yes, mutant oppression, a lot of these people that are in prison are innocent. However, kind of like the mental institution, if you weren't broken beforehand, you're going to be broken by the time you get out. And I think when you have such a large group of mutants that have been cornered and pushed and prodded, and now they are finally set free, their reaction is, well, we saw a lot of their reaction. Definitely swift, definitely energetic, if you want to go that way. So it's going to lead us to a real interesting direction for the next half of the season when we come back in the spring. Or winter, I guess, because it's New Year's. So, yeah, big cliffhanger ending. We've got the mutants across the country now released from their suppression collars and striking back. We've got Lauren and the Struckers taking care of Doc M's research. And we've got John captured by Jace and the Purifiers. So, leaving us off at a really interesting point. Now, we are coming back in just a few weeks. It is New Year's Day at 9 p.m. as opposed to 8 o'clock. So they've got a new time. But yeah, only a couple of weeks back straight away for the back half of the season. Really excited to see where they're going to go with. They've done mostly, I think, a good pace, a few quiet points, but really I think overall mostly a good pace of evolution of characters, and does start to see that perhaps looks like Lorna might be striking out against the Inner Circle, maybe seeing that the Inner Circle is striving to go just a little too far. So cannot wait to see that. And that's going to wrap us up. Thank you for joining me on this review. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Now, again, we do have a break on shows, but it's not going to be totally quiet here at D's Reviews. I'm going to be dropping some reviews of Season 1 of Runaways in the next couple of weeks. Probably do a couple of episodes per review. Just sort of chew through that, drop that off periodically until we get to the Season 2 premiere on December 21st. And they're dropping all the episodes of that all at once. So I'm going to do Season 1 in a few episode chunks, and then I'll do Season 2, again, a few episodes per review, and try and chunk that out during that week there. So don't want to take too long, but I want to kind of enjoy Season 2. I've really enjoyed Season 1. So anyway, I will let you guys know all about that. So watch for the Season 1 reviews of Runaway over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be dropping Season 2 after it comes out on December 21st. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me on this review. And if you enjoyed it, you know, you can always hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, just throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter or Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you're not. Don't want to miss the Runaway reviews. Don't want to miss the next half of The Gifted. So hit this button and you won't. And then I'll throw up a couple of our latest reviews for you to check out right here. So that's going to be it for me. I'm D. And I'm out of here. Catch you guys in the new year. Well, I guess beforehand. New Year for Gifted. Bye-bye.